Locked up women's secrets from inside a maximum security women's prison. Don't miss out on more true crime stories. Hit subscribe, like, share, and join the conversation in the comments. The night the alarm went off inside Indiana women's prison, the whole place froze. Red lights flashed across the gray walls, and the sound of boots hitting the floor echoed through every block. A correctional officer shouted, "Lockdown now." But in cell block D, a group of women stood completely still, their eyes darting toward one inmate, Tanya Reed. Tanya wasn't new to trouble. She had been there for 6 years on a drug-related charge, but that night, officers weren't just looking at her. They were looking for what she was hiding. As the guards stormed in, one of them pulled her mattress aside, another opened her locker, and then came the shock. Inside a toothpaste tube was a tiny packet of white powder, and in her cell vent, a piece of a phone wrapped in plastic. The women gasped. Someone whispered, "She's done." But Tanya didn't flinch. She stared straight ahead, calm, almost as if she knew this was coming. "You think that's all you'll find?" she said softly. The guard looked up, confused. Before anyone could ask what she meant, the hallway lights flickered, and then everything went dark. The whole prison was thrown into chaos. Inmates shouted, doors rattled, and the alarm blared again. Somewhere in the distance, a scream echoed down the corridor. What no one knew yet was that the blackout wasn't an accident. It was the start of something much bigger, a secret network inside the prison that had been building for years. 2 days before the blackout, the prison had been calm. Tanya spent most of her days in the laundry room, folding uniforms with her cellmate, Rosa. Rosa was quiet and scared of trouble, but she trusted Tanya. "You always seem to know things before they happen," she once said. Tanya smiled. "You just have to listen," she replied, tapping the wall beside her. Those walls were more than just concrete, they were a message board. Inmates had learned to talk through the plumbing, tapping, and whispering through the old pipes. A single knock could mean yes. 2 knocks could mean no. Through that hidden network, deals were made, friendships were built, and sometimes betrayals began. Officer Daniels, one of the newer guards, started to notice odd patterns. The same women got cleaning shifts near staff offices. Certain inmates were always near the mailroom. Packages that should have been inspected disappeared for hours before reappearing sealed. He mentioned it to his supervisor, but the reply was short. "You're new here, Daniels. Don't go digging too deep." But Daniels couldn't stop thinking about it, especially after he saw Tanya pass something small to another inmate during breakfast, something that looked like a folded note, hidden in a piece of bread. Later that evening, when Daniels tried to quietly check Tanya's cell, she wasn't there. The cameras showed her heading toward the medical wing, even though she had no appointment. 10 minutes later, power flickered for the first time. Inside the women's unit, panic began to rise. Some inmates whispered that it was an inside job. Others claimed it was a test. Someone was trying to expose the prison's underground operation. But the truth was far darker. When the power came back, Tanya was standing in her cell again, smiling faintly. Officer Daniels ran down the corridor, his flashlight shaking. He stopped at her door and shouted, "What did you do?" Tanya looked up, her eyes cold. "You'll find out soon enough," she said. Then came another sound, faint, steady, from the pipes. 3 knocks. Silence. Then 3 more. Every inmate froze. They all knew what that signal meant. It was the sign that the operation had begun. The morning after the blackout, tension hung heavy over Indiana women's prison. Guards moved through the halls with flashlights still in hand, their eyes scanning every corner as if the walls themselves might start whispering. The warden ordered a full lockdown, no visits, no work shifts, no recreation. Every cell was searched, every item checked. Yet somehow, the real trouble stayed hidden. Officer Daniels hadn't slept. He replayed Tanya's words all night. "You'll find out soon enough." Something about the calmness in her voice made his stomach twist. When he approached her cell the next morning, she was sitting cross-legged on her bunk, her face emotionless. "Morning, officer," she said softly. "You look tired." Daniels ignored the jab. "What happened last night?" he asked. Tanya smiled faintly. "The lights went out." "You tell me." Across the unit, other inmates were restless. Rosa, Tanya's cellmate, looked pale and anxious. She whispered through the pipes to another friend in the next block. "They're going to find out. Tanya's going to bring us all down." But the reply came fast. One knock, pause, one knock again.
No.
In the prison laundry room, where Tanya usually worked, officers found strange marks on the inside of the dryers, small scratches shaped like letters. When lined up, they spelled out code blue. No one knew what it meant, but Daniels couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't random. That night, he stayed late in the security office, reviewing the camera feeds from the day before the blackout. He watched Tanya pass a folded napkin to another inmate, then saw that inmate hand a bar of soap to someone else during shower time. The bar had something inside it, a piece of metal or wire. Daniels leaned closer to the monitor, his pulse racing. It wasn't just about drugs or smuggling anymore. This looked like coordination, something larger, something planned. Meanwhile, inside her cell, Tanya was preparing something of her own. She tore pages from her prison-issued Bible and folded them carefully into a small square. Inside, she slipped a note written with toothpaste mixed with ink from a broken pen. The words were simple: tonight, Block C. As night fell, the power flickered again. The guards tensed up, but this time, it didn't go out completely. Instead, a single blue emergency light flickered in the hallway, casting eerie shadows over the cells. From the medical wing came a shout. "Officer down." Daniels sprinted toward the sound, his radio crackling. When he reached the wing, one of the guards was on the floor, clutching his leg. It was one of the inmates, he gasped. But when Daniels looked around, all he saw were open supply drawers and a missing keyring. The realization hit him hard. This wasn't chaos. It was strategy. Someone inside the prison had organized the blackout, the attacks, the diversions, all of it. And the one person calm through it all was Tanya Reid. Back in her cell, Tanya stood near the bars, watching the hallway glow faintly blue. Rosa whispered, trembling, "Tanya, what's happening?" Tanya didn't answer. She looked up at the ceiling, where faint tapping sounds came through the pipes again, not in threes this time, but in a pattern that seemed deliberate. Tap, 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 tap. It was a signal, one that only a handful of women in the prison understood. Officer Daniels returned to the control room to alert the warden, but when he picked up the intercom phone, it was dead. Static hissed in his ear. He turned toward the surveillance screens. Every feed from Block C had gone black. Inmates began shouting across the unit. Metal clanged, doors rattled, and from somewhere deep in the prison, a woman's voice echoed down the corridor. Code blue. The words sent chills through everyone who heard them. Daniels grabbed his flashlight and ran toward Block C, heart pounding, but when he turned the corner, the sight that met him froze him in place. Tanya Reid was standing there, outside her cell. The hallway was dead silent except for the hum of the blue emergency light flickering overhead. Officer Daniels froze as his beam of light landed on Tanya Reid standing outside her cell, something that shouldn't have been possible. The door behind her was wide open, the lock hanging loose, pried apart with what looked like a sharpened piece of metal. For a brief second, their eyes met, his full of disbelief, hers calm and deliberate. "Tanya, how did you?" he began, but before he could finish, two other inmates appeared behind her, their prison uniforms half torn, their faces pale under the cold light. They weren't running, they were waiting. "Put it down," Daniels said, raising his hand. "Whatever you're doing, stop it now." Tanya tilted her head slightly. "You still don't get it, do you?" she said, her voice low but steady. "This isn't about getting out. It's about being heard." The warden's voice crackled over the radio, faint and panicked. "All units, Block C breach confirmed. All units respond immediately." Sirens began to wail through the prison, a red light flashing alongside the dim blue glow. Daniels looked at Tanya again, confusion and anger warring on his face. Being heard, he shouted over the noise. "You stabbed an officer." She shook her head slowly. "No," she said, "I didn't, but someone had to make them listen." As the sirens blared, Daniels stepped closer, Realizing the inmates weren't moving toward escape, they were circling something on the ground. He swung his flashlight and saw what it was, a pile of documents smuggled from the warden's office, scattered across the floor. They were files, misconduct reports, disciplinary notes, and grievance letters written by inmates about abuse, overcrowding, and ignored medical needs. Tanya had gathered them all. "This place hides what it doesn't want the world to see," Tanya whispered. "We live like we don't exist. So we made them see us." Before Daniels could respond, a loud crash echoed down the hall. The steel door at the far end burst open as tactical officers stormed in. They shouted commands, their boots thundering against the floor. Inmates dropped to their knees, hands up. But Tanya stayed standing, her chin raised.
"Down."
Now, one officer yelled, raising a taser. Daniels stepped in front of her instinctively.
"Wait. Don't."
The taser fired. Tanya collapsed. For a few moments, all that could be heard was the sound of heavy breathing and the hum of the lights. Daniels knelt beside her as two officers cuffed her hands. Her eyes fluttered open briefly. "They'll cover it up," she whispered, barely audible. "But the files, they're already gone." Daniels frowned. "What do you mean, gone?" She smiled weakly. "You'll see." The next morning, as the prison returned to lockdown, officers searched Tanya's cell from top to bottom. The Bible, the soap bars, even the toilet pipes, all inspected. But the stack of documents found in Block C was incomplete. Nearly half the reports were missing. 2 days later, a reporter from an Indianapolis newspaper received a plain brown envelope with no return address. Inside were photocopied pages, the same grievances and reports Tanya had stolen. They detailed months of neglect, broken security systems, and even the death of an inmate that had been ruled accidental. The story exploded across state headlines. Whistleblower inmate exposes conditions inside Indiana women's prison. Back inside the prison, Tanya was placed in solitary confinement. Daniels visited her cell once, days after the incident. She was sitting in the corner, staring at the blue glow of the hallway light that seeped through the crack in her door. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. Tanya didn't look at him. "It was never about me," she said. "It was about the truth." As he turned to leave, Daniels heard faint tapping echo through the pipes again, a familiar rhythm traveling through the prison walls.
Tap.
Tap, tap,
Tap.
The women were still talking, still connected. Outside, the story kept spreading. Investigations were launched, officials suspended. Tanya Reid's name was sealed in prison records, but her message had escaped far beyond the walls that tried to contain it. And every night, in that dim blue light, the prison hummed with whispers of her name, the woman who never escaped, but set everyone free.